Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. I'm Carrie Sharp. Great show for you tonight. We hope you'll participate. Ask the questions that you've been wanting to ask. I have James Smallwood here with me. He is the president of the Fraternal Order of Police, also a Metro Nashville police officer. James, thank you for coming in today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
You answered the call. You said yes when we asked you to come in, and we appreciate that because this can be a hot seat, as you know, at times. Yeah. Of course, this is Open Line. It is your chance to call in, ask questions. The number is on the bottom of the screen, 615-737. Plus is the number to call. As we get those calls lined up tonight, I'm going to be the one answering the question, or asking the questions tonight. We'll let James answer them. And I do have a lot of questions, and let's jump right in to where you guys have really been making news lately with this effort to push for a community oversight board by the group Community Oversight Now. Right now, it's been approved to be on the ballot in November, but the FOP has sued to stop that effort. Can you explain why?
Well, you know, we don't think that they're using the right benchmark for the community oversight proposal that they have right now. We think that they're using the wrong election, and that's the reason we filed suit.
Yeah, and let me just read a little bit. I made some notes because even in our reporting, just because it gets into all the legality and the wording, it's like, well, what? I don't understand. Let's do it. So the Metro Charter is saying an amendment may be proposed to Davidson County voters if a petition is signed by 10% of the number of voters who voted in the preceding general election. So that's really the crux of this argument that you guys have right now. For this election, Community Oversight Now has used August 2016 as that preceding election and the number of signatures they need. FOP says no, it's not August 2016, it's the one we just had for mayor.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And so there's an argument, but Election Commission said no, you're wrong.
Well, the Election Commission is using the opinion that Metro Legal gave them. That's why we have lawyers. So,
so where does this all stand right now?
I don't understand what you mean. Where does it stand?
Well, the lawsuit right now is in the hands of.
It's going through the procedural aspects of it. I haven't gotten an update as to where we're at with it.
We're basically waiting for a judge to say whether it can move forward or not.
I think they're waiting on a date to hear both sides of the issue.
Okay, so this comes down to the wording of Metro Charter and the legality of it right now. But really, the FOP does not want to see a community oversight board. Is that fair to say?
No, not necessarily. You know, it's long been said our opposition to this proposal does not mean that we're opposed to some sort of community advisory or community oversight board altogether. This one we are opposed to. What
don't you like about it?
There's a whole lot of things involved in this that just are not good for Nashville and police officers and Metro employees altogether. So, for instance, you've got there's no regulation on who can sit on the board, but it does exclude a large part of the community from sitting on several of those seats. There is absolutely no police or law enforcement perspective. There's no relevant law enforcement perspective, and there's no representation for the employee on the board.
Part of their proposal forbids a current Metro officer from sitting on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, does that mean someone who is retired can't sit on it?
They can't be retired within the last 5 years.
Okay.
And as you and I both know, a lot of things can change, not only in law enforcement, but any profession over the course of 5 years.
Have you seen other communities where a community oversight board works well? You
know, there's a lot of communities that have them. And there was an interesting article in the Tennessean this weekend where it talked about this an added level of bureaucracy, and a lot of times they end up not working the way that they were intended to.
Because it wouldn't have subpoena power.
The one that they've proposed has some level of power to subpoena an officer to come speak.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you very much. I didn't think that was the case. If a community oversight board were to happen, because the mayor does support the idea, if something were to happen eventually, whether it gets voted on in November or you guys can come up with something as a whole, something else gets passed in the future, what do you think would work?
That's hard to say. I think everybody has to come to the table and everybody has to have some valuable input, but also everybody has to be reasonable in understanding the different perspectives. And up until this point, that's not happened.
How so?
We've not been involved at all in the conversation for this proposal.
Okay. What happens right now in order to police the police? If somebody has a beef in the way they were treated by a police officer in cases of use of force, how is an officer investigated currently?
Well, there's several different avenues. You can call into the police department and file a complaint with that officer's direct supervisor. You can call the Office of Professional Accountability, which is led by a civilian, Kathy Morante, and file a complaint there, and they'll investigate it through their channels. You can call the chief's office or the mayor's office and file a complaint, and it'll be fed through in those channels. So there are several different avenues for a civilian who felt like they may have been slighted by a police officer to file a complaint.
And where does the FOP get involved in those channels?
We don't get involved in the investigation. We represent our officers if need be, but we don't get involved in the investigation.
Do you think those channels work how it is currently set up?
Well, I think the statistics support that they do. Nationwide, I think there was a study published that 8 to 10% of officers are found to be sustained. Their complaints are found sustained. In Metro, I believe it was 28 to 30% of complaints are sustained. So certainly they're working, and not all complaints are going to be sustained for various different reasons, whether it be not understanding the law fully or just not providing a truthful account of what had happened.
Do you understand from a layman's perspective why those processes are not trusted?
You know, I have a hard time understanding why it's not trusted. You know, the argument's always made doctors don't police doctors and dentists don't police dentists, and the fact is they do. They're represented by well-respected peer professionals in their environment, and they judge what their actions are. To say that somebody coming in off the street that has no perspective of law enforcement, has no idea what we do on a day-to-day basis, can judge exactly what we do, that's just not appropriate.
What is the morale right now after this most recent officer-involved shooting? We had another one just about a year and a half ago with Jacquees Clemens. What is the morale like within the force right now?
Well, you know, back in April, the FOP conducted a survey amongst its members, and we determined that morale on a scale of 1 to 10 was a 4.1.
That's terrible.
It's terrible. So we can only say that with what's gone on over the last 4 or 5 months has made it even worse.
And why do you think it's so bad beyond the officer-involved shootings?
There's a lot more to it than just what the community pressure is. There's some administrative pressure, and a lot of folks aren't happy with where they're at. They're not happy with the way they're being treated by all sides of this, the administration, the police department, the city administration, the community. So that drives morale down. They're overworked, they're underpaid, and when they're promised something and they don't get it, that certainly impacts it as well. What
about the look at staffing? Are we at staff? Are we understaffed for our city's growth?
Currently, we're somewhere in the range of 1,400 and some change. I don't know the exact number. I think the last number is 1,438 or something, and we're budgeted for 1,510.
Oh, wow.
So we're well under what we're budgeted for, and even we would argue that even what we're budgeted for is not enough to get the job done.
What does an officer coming right out of training get paid?
Right around $42,000.
And how many hours beyond the 40-hour a week that's expected do officers work typically?
A substantial number, especially right now with special events and everything else. It's not unheard of for an officer to work 50, 60 hours a week.
Is that volunteer or assigned?
It can go either way. When there's demand for overtime, the request is put out to officers to sign up for a special event. If that's not met, then the department will do what's called a mandate, and they will mandate officers to work the overtime even if they don't want to.
We have heard recently some calls for the chief's resignation, especially since this latest officer-involved shooting. What is the FOP's take on that?
You know, if you're asking for the chief to resign as a result of this shooting, that's wrong. The chief couldn't have done anything differently to make this shooting not occur. What happened was an individual presented a firearm in an altercation with the police, and if you expect any other outcome when you're asked to drop a gun, then you're not paying attention to the world. You have got to be reasonable in all situations. The chief isn't responsible for that. Now, the chief did say in one of his interviews, I can't remember the exact terminology, but it was something to the effect of, you've got to look back and see what we've done over the last 8 years, and if you like what we've done, then keep liking what we're doing, because we're going to keep doing it. From the employee perspective, we don't like what we've seen over the last 8 years, and there's a lot of issues with morale, and that needs to be addressed.
Again, what is the issue over the last 8 years? I mean, let's detail some of those.
You're looking at officer mandates, the way that policing is done in Nashville. There's 71% or so of officers disagree with the current strategies in the police department. And there's a lot of other things that bleed into the way that they're being treated administratively in the police department. For instance, the way we do our annual rebid, or when our grievances are aired and they're not heard.
Okay, very interesting. When you bring these up with the chief, his administration, do you feel like you're heard at that point or not?
Not really, no.
What can change that?
I don't know.
A new administration?
I think that the chief hears our concerns, but there's no action. So that's our frustration.
What is the current police philosophy or mandate for procedure right now that you all don't like, that you think could be done better?
Well, the problem is there are so many special events right now, and we're mandating officers to work more than they ever have, and basically it boils down to not having enough people, enough personnel to do the job. We've got to staff the events, but we've got to find a way to give these officers some sort of relief, and whether it be reducing the number of specialized units to repopulate the patrol units and give some more relief to those officers, or finding another way to give some more advanced notification. We're working with the police department now to try and find those avenues, but we haven't been able to find them.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take your calls after this break. Again, if you have questions, now's the time to get on the phone. 615-737+ is the number to call. We're coming right back.